How much money do you really need to retire? A shocking number of Americans are chasing the wrong retirement goal, and most won't realize it until it's too late. For decades, we've been told the same story. Work hard, save more, invest consistently, build a big enough nest egg, and one day, you'll retire comfortably. Simple. At least, that's what we're told. But what if the number you've been chasing your entire life is completely wrong? What if the real secret to retirement isn't becoming rich? What if it's something far simpler and far more attainable? Because today, we're going to follow the story of an ordinary American who discovered a truth that changed everything he thought he knew about money. A truth that could completely change the way you think about retirement. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why some people retire comfortably with less money than you imagine, while others struggle despite having millions. Let's begin. Meet Michael, 53 years old, married, 2 children, a decent house in the suburbs, a stable engineering job. From the outside, his life looked successful. But there was one problem. Every time he thought about retirement, he felt anxious. Not because he wasn't saving. Not because he had debt. Most of it was under control. And not because he lacked discipline. In fact, he'd spent decades doing exactly what financial experts recommend. Yet something never felt right. Everywhere he looked, people seemed to have more. Financial influencers talked about retiring with $5 million. Others claimed $10 million wasn't enough. News headlines warned about inflation, market volatility, healthcare costs, economic uncertainty. The message was clear. No matter how much money you had, it probably wasn't enough. And slowly, Michael began to believe it. Until one ordinary Tuesday afternoon changed everything. His company announced restructuring. Nobody knew who would stay. Nobody knew who would go. For the first time in years, Michael felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Fear. Real fear. Not fear of losing money. Fear of losing control. Because suddenly he realized something. His entire financial plan depended on a paycheck. Without that paycheck, everything became uncertain. That evening, after dinner, he sat alone at the kitchen table. Laptop open. Spreadsheet ready. Coffee growing cold beside him. And instead of doing what most people do, checking his investment balance, he asked himself a different question. A question that would change his life. How much does my life actually cost? Not my dream life. Not my fantasy life. My real life. Month after month. Year after year. At first, the exercise seemed boring. Mortgage. Insurance. Utilities. Food. Transportation. Healthcare. Entertainment. Travel. Everything. He entered every number carefully, one by one. And when he finished, he stared at the screen. Because the answer shocked him. For years, he had obsessed over how much money he needed. But he had never seriously calculated how much money he actually spent. And the gap between those two numbers was enormous. Most people never realize this. They spend years chasing a retirement number they pulled from the internet. A number based on someone else's life, someone else's goals, someone else's expenses. But retirement isn't about someone else's life. It's about yours. And that's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because once Michael understood his expenses, he started seeing retirement differently. Not as a giant mountain of money, but as a machine. A machine designed to produce one thing: income. And what he discovered next changed everything. ACT2, the retirement math nobody talks about. What Michael discovered next wasn't a secret investment strategy. It wasn't a hidden stock. It wasn't cryptocurrency. And it definitely wasn't some get-rich-quick scheme. It was math. Simple math. But sometimes the simplest truths are the most powerful. Michael realized that retirement wasn't about reaching a magical number. It was about replacing income. Think about it. When you're working, your paycheck funds your lifestyle. Every month, money arrives. Bills get paid. Life moves forward. But retirement changes one thing. The paycheck disappears. And that's when a frightening question appears. Where does the money come from now? Most people assume they need a giant pile of money. But Michael started looking at the problem differently. Instead of asking, how much money do I need? He asked, how much income do I need? Those two questions sound similar, but they lead to completely different answers. And that's where things got interesting. Because when he looked at his expenses again, he discovered something surprising. His family didn't need luxury. They needed stability. They didn't need private jets. They didn't need a mansion. They didn't need a Ferrari. They needed enough income to maintain the life they already loved. And suddenly retirement stopped feeling impossible But then something unexpected happened. The more Michael studied retirement, the more confused he became, because everyone seemed to have a different answer. Some experts said you need $1 million. Others said $2 million. Some claimed $5 million. Others insisted $10 million wasn't enough. Who was right? The answer surprised him. None of them. Because retirement isn't a number. Retirement is a lifestyle. A person living comfortably in rural Tennessee may need far less than someone living in downtown San Francisco. A couple with no debt has different needs than someone carrying large monthly expenses. And that's when Michael realized something most people never understand. The retirement industry sells numbers. But real life doesn't work that way. Real life is personal. Very personal. And what he discovered next changed everything. The millionaire paradox. While researching retirement, Michael came across a study that fascinated him. Many millionaires still worry about money. Think about that. People with more money than they ever imagined still feel financially insecure. How is that possible? The answer isn't financial. It's psychological. Human beings are remarkably adaptable. No matter how much money we have, we quickly become used to it. A bigger house becomes normal. A nicer car becomes normal. Higher income becomes normal. And then we want more. Psychologists call this hedonic adaptation. Most people call it the treadmill. You keep running, but somehow you never arrive. And that's where the story takes another unexpected turn. Because Michael realized that financial freedom isn't really about money. It's about control. Control over your time. Control over your choices. Control over your future. And once he understood that, everything changed. The day he stopped chasing millions one Saturday morning, Michael sat down and made a decision. For years, he'd focused on growing his net worth. But now he wanted to measure something different. Freedom. So he created what he called his freedom score. Instead of tracking how much money he had, he tracked how many months of living expenses his investments could cover. At first, the number was disappointing. Then something incredible happened. For the first time, progress felt real. Every month, he wasn't chasing an abstract number. He was buying freedom, 1 month at a time, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. The motivation was completely different. And strangely, the journey became easier. Because the goal finally felt meaningful. Most people never realize this. Money itself is rarely the goal. What people truly want is what money represents. Security, choice, freedom, peace of mind. And that's where many investors make a critical mistake. They spend decades focusing on maximizing returns, when they should be focusing on maximizing freedom. The difference sounds small, but it changes everything. ACT3, the freedom formula. Over the next few years, Michael developed a simple framework. Not a strategy, a framework. Because strategies change, principles endure. Principle number 1. Spend less than you earn. Simple, but incredibly powerful. Every dollar you don't spend becomes a worker, a tiny employee you can send into the world to earn more money. Principle number 2. Own productive assets. Assets that generate value. Businesses, stocks, real estate, investments that continue working even when you're sleeping. Principle number 3. Be patient. And this was the hardest lesson of all. Because modern culture rewards speed. Everyone wants results immediately. Immediate success. Immediate wealth. Immediate freedom. But wealth doesn't usually work that way. Real wealth often grows. Quietly. Slowly. Almost invisibly. Until one day it becomes impossible to ignore. And that's when Michael discovered the most powerful force in personal finance. Compounding. A force so powerful that Albert Einstein supposedly called it the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he actually said that or not doesn't matter. Because the principle remains true. Small actions repeated consistently create extraordinary results. Most people underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years. Because 10 years feels far away. But eventually 10 years arrives. And that's where the final twist begins. Final. The moment everything changed at age 61, Michael experienced something remarkable. Not because he became wealthy. Not because he retired. Not because he hit some famous financial milestone. Something far more meaningful happened. His company offered voluntary retirement packages. Years earlier, the announcement would have terrified him. This time it didn't. Because for the first time in his life, he had options. He didn't need the package. He didn't need the job. He didn't need permission. He could stay or leave. The choice was his. And that's when he realized he'd already won. Not because of how much money he had, but because money no longer controlled his decisions. Financial freedom wasn't a destination. It was a feeling of confidence, a feeling of independence, a feeling of knowing that tomorrow belonged to him. Most people imagine retirement as the day they stop working. Michael learned something different. Retirement begins the moment work becomes optional. Read that again. Retirement begins when work becomes optional, not when you're forced to stop, not when society says you're old enough, not when you hit a specific birthday, when you have the freedom to choose. And that's a completely different definition. Conclusion: so, how much money do you really need to retire? The truth is, there isn't one answer. And maybe that's the wrong question anyway. A better question might be this: how much freedom do you want? Because every dollar saved, every investment made, every smart financial decision is really buying one thing: choice. The choice to spend more time with family, the choice to travel, the choice to pursue passions, the choice to walk away from situations that no longer serve you. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all. Financial freedom isn't about becoming richer than everyone else. It's about building a life where money stops being the center of every decision. A life where your future isn't controlled by fear. A life where your time belongs to you. And if you remember only one thing from this story, remember this: the goal was never money. The goal was freedom. Money is simply the tool. Freedom is the prize. And once you understand that, you may discover you're much closer to retirement than you ever imagined.